Welcome back to Gems Podcast. I am the founder and host, Miss Genesis Amaris Kemp, and with me today is Dr. Melissa Reilly. And here's a bit about Dr. Melissa. She's a clinical psychologist, parent coach, and a mom without a mom. Although grief has been a part of Melissa's life from the age of 4, she was shocked to find that a resurgence of grief would be a part of her birth experience. Through her personal and professional life, Dr. Melissa has come to recognize that moms without a mom experience grief during the years postpartum and beyond. Even if they don't realize it, she is passionate about helping moms without a mom heal through grief, build community, feel joy in motherhood, and move from feelings of isolation, insecurity, and overwhelm to a place of confidence and resilience. And today we're going to unpack, what does it feel like to be a mom without a mom, and interweave all the important intricacies of it. So without further ado, please welcome Dr. Melissa Reilly to GEMS Podcast.
Well, thank you so much, Genesis. I really appreciate you having me as a guest on your show. I'm thrilled to be here.
My pleasure, Melissa. And before we dive in, I definitely want to do our icebreaker segment. So I want you to share a fun and interesting fact about yourself.
Okay, so a fun and interesting fact about myself is I am a Walt Disney World fanatic and have gone more times than I can count, both with my family and by myself. And I have to say, I love going by myself. I love my family being there too, but being an adult by yourself there is a whole lot of fun. And an interesting piece to it, I am such a kid when I'm there. I like to dress up in all kinds of princess outfits. So I get a new one each time I go. So I have this outfit for for Mrs. Incredible, for Belle, for Sleeping Beauty, for Elsa, and Minnie Mouse. So it's lots of fun.
That is awesome. You would definitely get along well with my former accounting professor, who we still hang out time to time, even though I graduated and I am not an accounting major. That's a fun fact for me. She literally goes to Disney multiple times throughout the year. And I was like, Professor Claxton, the amount of times you go to Disney, you might as well be a season ticket holder.
I had an annual ticket for 1 year a couple years ago. It was marvelous.
Do you ever think about getting another one?
Yeah, I will. I mean, that 1 year was crazy because we live in Pennsylvania, so it's not a hop, skip, and a jump, but yeah, eventually.
Definitely not. So I'll say a crazy fact that my husband and I did going to Disney. So it was our first time at Disney, never been when I was a kid. And it's only because my mom was like, oh, well, how many times can you tell people that you've been to the Caribbean versus Disney World? And I said, well, Mom, I feel like we only go because you're Caribbean. So anywho, my husband and I went as big adults, and we were supposed to spend the whole day at Disney, but we got in a fight over this timeshare that I made my husband buy that he wanted to get out of. So we were trying to undo the process. So we literally did 3 parks in half a day, and we drove from park to park. And then while he was driving, I was doing the fast pass. And for any Disney fanatics out there, you know that is ludicrous to do 3 parks in half a day.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my goodness. So you have to get back there so you can actually enjoy it.
Yes, absolutely. So now that we have the icebreaker out the way, and we kind of connected on the Disney level, let's talk about, what does it mean to be a mom without a mom? Because some people may hear that and say, oh, well, did she not have a mother figure? Or what happened to her mom? Or was her mom just absent from her life? She has a mom, but her mom just said, oh, let me exit stage right, because there's all types of different scenarios. And I definitely don't want the listeners or the viewers to make any assumptions.
Yes. And Absolutely. So there are three types of moms without a mom, as I define it. So first is those mothers that are separated from their own mom by death, by emotional estrangement, or by physical distance. So in my circumstance, I was separated from my mother actually by all three of those circumstances. So um, I was very close to my mom for most of my life, and then went to college and moved away and did not live in the same state as my mother past the age of 21. So for the next 4 years, we lived in different states, and it was just the circumstances of it. And then we had a falling out, unfortunately, 8 months prior to her death. So we had an estrangement, and then she passed. I was at 25 when that happened.
Oh,
So
wow.
there are some things that women who are moms without a mom, regardless of which category they're in, have in common. So first, when we become mothers, there is a natural longing to have a mom in our life, even if that mom wasn't the mom we had hoped they would be, right? So regardless of what your relationship was, it's natural to have an expectation or a desire to have that mom in your life. So women that don't have a mom go through a grief experience over the loss of not having what they had thought that they would have or wanted. The second characteristic that is common amongst the three is this difficulty with identity development. So, who are we as moms? We learn that as we become a mom. And this will be one of the things you discover, Genesis, is we all have in our head the kind of mom we think we're going to be, right? And then we become a mom. And sometimes part of that's true, right? And other times it's not. But our sense of becoming a mom and who we are as a mom is impacted and influenced by how we were mothered. And so it doesn't define who we are as mom, but there's an impact. And when we don't have our mother in our life, for whichever reason, that can make that identity process more challenging. And then the third common feature is the difficulty in having a community. So many of us look to our mothers as a go-to person, particularly during pregnancy and postpartum. And when you're a mom without a mom, you don't have that go-to person. And many individuals feel a sense of isolation, insecurity, and oftentimes will describe this feeling of shame over not having what they think, not being all together in a way that they see other moms be. And there's a real heaviness to not having a mom in their life. And so those are three things that kind of link those three different categories together.
And thank you for sharing those three different categories because each one of those categories has their own characteristics whenever you think about it, from the loss of a mother due to death, due to estrangement, and the last category that you mentioned. Can you say that again, Dr.
Yes,
Melissa?
physical. Yep, it's physical distance. So those are moms who don't live close to their mom, and so there's this barrier to that connection. So, for example, if you are a military mom,
Mhm.
or international schools, or just simply living, in a different part of the state or country, you don't
Oh, it
have
sounds like an
easy
airplane.
access. You don't have that easy access to a mom. Although having digital connection is wonderful, it's not the same as having her right there.
Absolutely. And for the physical distance piece, I've seen some women who women and their mothers who live in the same city. Maybe they're 30 minutes away and they just don't even interact with each other. So what part of the category would that fall in? Would that be estrangement in a sense, or would it really be physical distance?
Well, it depends on their circumstances. So
Okay.
if they're not communicating or connecting because there is an emotional conflict or there's a toxic nature to the relationship that creates that barrier, then that would be more of the emotional estrangement. And for some women, they've had to make the very difficult yet conscious choice to disconnect from a relationship that they found to be abusive or unhealthy. And even though it's a choice that they're making because of their own health, it still creates this feeling of grief and isolation that oftentimes isn't recognized because, again, it was a choice that they made. Now, if they aren't communicating because it's just difficult and they just don't have an opportunity, then that would be more of a distance
Okay, perfect.
factor.
Thank you for clarifying that, Melissa. And when you think about the situation that happened with your mother, and you think about the grief part after she passed, and then you think about what led up to the separation, not just the distance, but the emotional estrangement, do you think there was anything that you could have done to go back and reconcile the relationship? And do you feel like not reconciling the relationship hit you harder when you were going through the grief process?
Oh, absolutely. I think my mother and I were just at this point in our lives where I was trying to figure out who I was separate from her, as a young adult who chose a different path. Well, I wouldn't say different path. I mean, my mom was a very bright, ambitious, professional woman, um, and always, promoted that in me. I just had a different focus in certain ways, and we just clashed. And like I said, had a falling out. I am absolutely confident that if she had lived longer, we would have worked it out. You know, um, the 2 weeks prior to her death, um, we had two very brief conversations, and they were really the only times we had talked in the 8 months. And so I had this sense of hope that things were going to get better. And then she died suddenly. So, um, and yes, that estrangement definitely complicated my grief process and made it, a difficult process to begin with, but definitely added to it. But I had spent a lot of time kind of working on my emotional reactions to that relationship and how it ended. And since it had been 15 years
Wow.
prior to my son's birth, I really thought I had worked through it, like everything was fine, right? Which is, I chuckle now because it's just silly. We grieve forever. It never ends. It just, plays a different role in our life depending on what we're going through. And so then when I became pregnant, and then had multiple losses, and then the pregnancy with him was very difficult, I was really struck by that longing that I had and that missing um, that I experienced from my mom, you know, um, and a lot of those feelings of not being good enough or um, fear of not measuring up kept coming back, during those early years, and really kind of consistent with some of the older grief patterns I had experienced.
And thank you for sharing that. And I'm glad that you were able to work through it after the fact. Like you realize that, okay, there's something that I need to get over, but it's going to take time because grief for everyone looks totally different. Whether
Mhm.
it's the grief of a loved one, a friend, a pet, relationships, even jobs.
Yes.
And there's so many intricacies whenever you are going through the grieving process, and versus internalizing everything, sometimes you have to get to a point where you share what you're going through with a trusted source or a paid professional to kind of just help you navigate some things that you can't see because maybe you have the blinders all on and you need to take them off in order to have that clarity.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to your point about grief being over many different things, I think that's really important to recognize because again, it can be the loss of a relationship, even when that person is still alive, right? And we often don't recognize that is a significant grief process. And when we've experienced multiple griefs in our life, right, it can churn up and stir up those previous experiences, which is very common.
Yes, I call them the hidden triggers because you didn't know that that trigger was there, and then something happens, and you're like, you have that knee jerk reaction, especially. It's kind of sounds a little crazy, but I'll share it. So I was in our laundry room at home, and my father passed in November of 2020. And I went into the laundry room. I think it was either to put something in the dryer or take something out. I can't remember. And it literally smelled like my dad had
Mm.
just been in the laundry room. And so I told my mom, who's here at home with my husband and I said, Mom, it really smells like dad was here. And my mom kind of just made a chuckle and she's like, oh, well, he probably just came by to let you know that he's watching over you or
Aw.
he's near. And I was like, because sometimes it kind of sounds a little crazy to tell people stuff like that because they're like, what are you smoking on or something?
Yeah.
But
I think having those connections is so powerful, and is so comforting and supportive. And so that's awesome that you were open to that experience.
it was a little scary at first, but then
Sure.
I opened up, and I think that gave me comfort in the moment because whenever I went to my friend's wedding and I saw her dancing with her dad, like I almost had to get up and excuse myself because my eyes started to swell with water, and it felt like it was triggering me since it hasn't been 2 complete years since my dad passed. And yes, I'm happy for my friend that she
Right.
got married, but it's like certain things are very triggering. And just like going to funerals, because I've been to um, multiple funerals back to back now within a year and a half, from losing my dad, my corporate job from oil and gas, and then both of my grandmothers. And then
Mm.
my best friend's dad, who was just like another father figure to me. And it was kind of hard. And after that, I said, no, I just cannot stomach another funeral. I'm sorry. But
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, going, that's one of the things as being a mom, right? And you're around and you're seeing, other, moms with their children, toddlers and babies and older kids with their grandmothers, right?
yeah.
So you have the three generations together. And that is something that if you don't have that, again, it's happy to see that in others, but it can create that sense of sadness, again, that longing of wanting to have something that you don't and that you can't have, right? And that becomes a part of the parenting process that, like I said, it kind of startled me. I didn't expect to feel that. And it takes some time to be able to recognize that that's what I'm feeling and that it's okay and normal, right? And so then how do I redirect my attention and energy to be back on where I want it to be so that I don't get too derailed by, the discomfort that I'm feeling in that moment.
Absolutely. And when you think about your profession as a clinical psychologist, and you think about some of the moms that come to you that don't have mothers, what are some of the recurring themes that you find with those women? Of course, without saying anything
Sure, of
proprietary.
course. Right, right, of course. No, the big things, right, that I hear so often is, like I mentioned, that sense of shame over not feeling like they're have it all together, right? There's the sense of, wait a minute, why can't I be able to just do everything, you know, um, without recognizing that they're trying to do everything without the support of somebody that provides a lot for us, right? And so, we need to build that community. We need to find additional go-to people in our life. Um, so, I usually encourage people to find more than just one person, because our mom typically fulfills more than one role in our life. So I usually say, find a wise woman. So somebody that you can ask the questions to, when you're not sure about things. Find a go-getter. So the person that does things and gets things done. So when you're overwhelmed with the laundry, or you just can't get to the grocery store, this person will be there in a minute and just get it done for you. And then the emotional support. So the person you can just kind of talk about your feelings and emotions with. And those individuals aren't necessarily the same person. So recognizing the strengths that your friends have and being able to call on them becomes really important. Oh, and the fourth person, because I usually encourage 4 people, is the late night talker. So this is the person that, for whatever reason is up, that you can just call at any hour.
I like that. The wise woman, the go-getter, the I'm thinking the emotional
Emotional
support,
support.
and then the late night talker. So
Yes.
those, if you want to have like a coffee or a happy
Yep.
hour or whatever the case may be, just to kind of talk through some of the things that are going on in your head that obviously you can't talk about with a spouse because they may not understand it because they're not a woman,
Right.
or whatever the case may be.
Right. Right. And then sometimes it's about the stresses of, parenting differences, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes we just need somebody outside of our, partner relationship.
Yes, exactly. And I like how you put partner relationship because I want to make sure I address the entire audience community here. And one thing that I did for my husband and myself is we watched this show on Netflix called Working Moms. So he could kind of see what it's like to be a mom who has a career, but then also juggling. And it is so realistic. Like the mothers, what they go through and etc. Because sometimes I feel like people expect mothers to be superhumans and super
Yes.
moms, not knowing that they have emotional stuff that they're dealing with, physical stuff, because becoming a mom, your entire body changes.
Mhm.
You may have some spiritual stuff that's going on, depending, like if you're questioning, okay, do I believe in the universe? Do I believe in God? Do I believe in someone else? Or just other components, because we're very multifaceted. And I like to say we're like noodles. I heard the analogy, women are like noodles and men are like waffles, because they like to compartmentalize. And I think whenever you're a mom without a mom, you just need those 4 people that you mentioned to talk to, because if you're going through all those changes and they're happening fast or unexpected, because no one really prepares you for motherhood. No one
Right.
tells you what you should look out for, because it's different for every mother.
Right. And my mom community included professionals. So because of my traumatic pregnancy, I was out of work for most of it. And therefore, my maternity leave was not nearly as long as I wanted it to be, because I had to kind of take it before he was born. So I went back to work and he was still an infant. And his early childhood learning center became a huge resource for me, as part of my mom community. And, I had a beloved aunt, and I still have, she's still, she's still alive. She's more like a sister to me than anything, was, another go-to person. So it can be family, it can be friends, but it can also be professionals. And I encourage moms, if they need to think outside of the box when identifying those people in their life.
Thank you for sharing that, Melissa. And let's talk about, like, as we begin to wind down, let's talk about the comparison, because I see a lot of mothers trying to compare themselves to somebody else that's a mother, especially whenever their children are achieving certain things, like, oh, Billy just got potty trained, and maybe your child's not potty trained, or they're able to lose the baby weight a lot faster than somebody else, or they're able to really, juggle between being a mom and going back to work, whereas the other mother may stay at home. I think the art of comparison, whenever you are a mother without a mom or just that mother figure, can definitely play into psychological aspects. But from your professional standpoint, what are your thoughts regarding that?
I encourage all moms to feel good about who they are as a mom. We're all doing the best that we can with what we have at the time. And when we look at those around us, we are looking at them from our own vantage point. We don't see them, from their vantage point. So things will always look a certain way based on our own history. Um, and so those comparisons typically aren't very helpful or useful, right? And so, feel good about who you are. If you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're needing assistance, be unapologetic about it. We are not biologically designed to care for our family without assistance. We just aren't. So it's an impossible, inappropriate expectation. And society does not do a great job of pointing that out. But we aren't built to be in these little isolated units. The phrase "it takes a village" is true. It really does.
Thank you for sharing that. And Dr. Melissa, as we wind down, I want you to leave the listeners and viewers with your call to action for this segment.
Okay, I would love to connect with your listeners. And I actually have 2 free guides that I would love to offer them. So the one is for those moms that have a little baby. And so this will be you soon, but it's it's a guide called Caring for Yourself While Caring for Your Baby. And it is 6 strategies to help moms engage in self-care that do not require them to step away from their baby. So this is really helpful for those moms without a mom, because many of us aren't able to get alone time or downtime that's separate from our child. But this is good for all moms. Because sometimes, again, there is no such thing as me time, when our babies are young. So that I have that guide. And then the other guide that I have is for moms of children of all ages, and it's called the Enjoy Being a Mom Again Quick Guide. And that's for those moms that are struggling with those feelings of longing or missing or memories that are getting in the way of them being present in the moment and enjoying the motherhood process. So it gives a pretty easy 5-step process of re-engaging with the current moment. So I would love to give those to your listeners, and so I'm sure we can link those. But they can also follow me on Instagram at Moms Without a Mom, and my website is momswithoutamom.com. So feel free to reach out, connect with me. I'd love to help your listeners build their own mom community.
Thank you so much, Dr. Melissa Reilly, for just coming here and just sharing your thoughts around a mom without a mom, as well as sharing your personal story and how you're helping other mothers find their pathway. And for you listeners and viewers, all of Dr. Melissa's contact information will be in the show notes, so you could connect with her further. And also, don't forget to subscribe and share this segment. We are on 40 plus platforms, and also follow us over on YouTube for all things video content by going to Gems with Genesis Amaris Kemp. And then for those of you interested in continuing to fuel the mission of Gems podcast, which is to educate, inspire, and motivate while we connect the dots and bridge the gap for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. You can find out more by going to Genesis Amaris Kemp to become a brand sponsor or an ambassador, because without you, we wouldn't be ranked in the top 3% globally per www.listennotes.com. And until next time, peace, love, and lots of blessings. Remember, even though you may be a mom without a mom, it does not mean you don't have a rightful place in this universe. You are here to help somebody else and be the best mother that you can possibly be. There's no right or wrong reason, but there are always lessons to be learned.